Hello, everyone. My name is Doina Onchal, and I'm the founder of VOLUTION. Today, we are hosting the Stemming Up Speaker Series, and I'm very excited to be talking about scholarships. It's a topic that is very hot and everybody wants to know. And at VOLUTION, we focus on bringing more young women into STEM. And this is why we find that scholarships has been a topic that has been very interesting and very sought after by our students. We have today Scholarships Canada and Yconic that are going to talk to you about scholarships. So I am going to give the virtual mic to Logan, and he's going to introduce himself. And then after that, we're going to have Amanda, and she's going to introduce herself and talk about scholarships at Yconic. And please do feel free to leave your comments on chat. We will answer as we go as much as possible, but also we are going to have a Q&A session. So I'm very excited for this. So let's just get this party started. Logan, take it away.
Thanks very much, Doina. Hello, everybody. Thanks very much for having me out. It's great to meet you, as it were. My name is Logan. I'm with ScholarshipsCanada.com. About myself, I got a technical diploma from Niagara College, worked in film for a few years, went back to school to U of T and studied languages there because I wanted to work with words. So I don't have much in the way of a STEM education exactly, but I do have a lot of education. So I can certainly speak to paying for school. So yeah, looking forward to talking a bit about the site, best practices, and addressing your questions as well. So please hit us. If you've got Q's, we've got A's. So very good. Thanks for having us. That's me. Doina, after you.
Yeah, you can go ahead with your presentation, Logan, and then we're going to have Amanda going after. Yes, just continue. Thank you.
Sure thing. Great. So scholarshipscanada.com is the outfit that I'm with, but we're going to talk more broadly today about finding and applying for scholarships. Some of the most important advice and sort of best practices we give to students. If you're in the sort of grade 10, 11, even into grade 12, there's a lot you can do to set yourself up for success when you start looking at post-secondary. So now's a great opportunity to start building yourself. So let's jump in. ScholarshipsCanada.com, if I can move. Hey, there's me. I talked about this. Yeah, so I know a thing or two about tuition fees. We all on the call probably recognize the value of post-secondary education. StatsCan says bachelor's degree, you might earn $1 million more over the course of your career, master's degree, even more. You're going to spend a lot more too. But it's more than just money. We find that grads of higher ed are typically more engaged with their community and have healthier habits, even more environmentally conscious, right? It's about building good citizenship. And that's something a strong thread we'll sort of see throughout when it comes to preparing for scholarships. So how are you going to pay for everything? Well, savings and work. If you're lucky, right, you have a decent paying job, you're going to put some money aside. If you're really lucky, your parents might have a chunk of coin for you in the bank. Many are not so fortunate. Then we're talking loans, right? This is money you have to pay back, interest fees to banks or governments. And finally, we're talking scholarships and bursaries. This is what you really want, right? This is money you do not have to pay back. It comes to you, you put it into your education, you invest in yourself. So $1,000, right? Doesn't sound like so much when we're talking tuition fees, but that could be your textbooks for a year, right? Your bus pass if you're going to school in person still, or again, your phone bill, your entertainment, right? That $1,000 can get gobbled up pretty quickly. We're going to quickly go through a few scholarship myths. These are misconceptions students often have. Don't have the marks, right? A lot of awards actually don't ask about your grades at all. Some of them do, of course, but many do not. So if you're not a straight A student, don't despair. Too much competition, depends on the award. We'll talk a little bit about this as well. Smaller awards typically have less competition. And as you can see here, more than half of the admins that we're in touch with want more applications, right? And a small percentage get no applicants at all. So you might win just by default. Only schools give scholarships, of course not. Organizations, corporations, trade unions, your religious affiliations. Lots of different outfits will offer scholarships, and we'll talk about how to find them. Not in financial need. Chances are you are. I mean, short answer, right? If you're in financial need, if you don't have $40,000, $50,000 to pay for school in one drop, you probably have some financial need. Even then, only a third or so of the scholarships that we list even mention it. And finally, deadlines only in the spring, definitely not true. You can and should be applying throughout the year. We'll touch on a couple of awards, even that are closing very soon. Stuff to keep an eye out, right? That roll all throughout the year. So short answer, right? There's an award for you. You have to do some digging. You want to disabuse yourself of some of these misconceptions, but chances are you'll find something. So here's a quick browse of a few awards that we've picked out from our site. Retail education, this is all about retail experience. So if you've ever stocked a shelf, sold a shoe, chances are you're going to be eligible for this award, right? $1,000, 20 of them, short essay, easy. This one is renewable, right? Which means if you qualify for an award, you'll actually receive it year after year. So you receive the award in your first year, you actually continue getting money in year 2, year 3, year 4. This particular award's for Canadians going abroad, right? But the renewable thing is quite handy. Here's a big one that's closing in about 5 days. The TD Scholarships for Community Leadership. These are worth $70,000 over 4 years. Again, the renewable thing, right? Decent grades, 75%. It's high, but it's not unachievable. And it's open to students in your final year of high school, right? So this is a pretty big award, right? We're talking a lot of competition, but the main criteria is community leadership, right? Leadership, engagement in your school or neighborhood, your community. And that's a major, major thread we're gonna see again and again. Engaging with your community, volunteer, leadership. These are the things that admins are looking for. So where do you start, right? I know we're a sort of STEM crowd here, so you're thinking about your field of study, right? Your science tech. There's a lot of subfields within there, so the deeper in you get, the more specific. You may find awards that are really tailored to you, or you may be looking for stuff on the broader STEM umbrella level. Your study, of course, if you're just heading into college, university, you're looking for entrance awards. These are typically the most numerous, meaning they're awards for students who are just out of high school, starting their first college or uni, and schools are trying to encourage you, right? Pick us. The trick is, once you get your entrance scholarship, year 2, 3, 4 start getting more difficult to find. So if you can get those renewable awards, all the better. Activities, so this I've hinted already. Lots of activities will qualify you for scholarships. Sports is a big one, especially in the States, right? We hear a lot in movies, at least, about the sort of full ride football scholarship. This is less common in Canada. It does happen sometimes, but less common. More here, I find the admins are generally looking at the leadership bit, the community involvement bit, the volunteer experience. And it's not so much the number of volunteer hours, right? Here in Ontario, to graduate high school, we often think of you need your 40 hours. But scholarship admins are looking specifically for the quality of your experience. What have you learned? How has your engagement with your community changed you, right? And what have you given to others of yourself? So we're talking lessons learned, quality of connection, right? How engaged were you? And these sorts of things really come through. So don't think so much about how many hours do I need. Think about what kind of change can I make outside and inside myself too. It's very metaphysical. Academic average, that's pretty straightforward, right? Your grades. A few other factors to consider, a little bit less obvious. Heritage, we're seeing more and more awards for like equity-seeking groups. Indigenous is a big one here in Canada. Other heritage groups as well. So if you belong to one, odds are good you may find a scholarship that is sort of geared towards folks like you. And affiliation, sort of like activities. This is more like the people you surround yourself with, companies, religious groups, unions. For instance, when I was growing up, my dad worked at Coca-Cola. And so Coke themselves offered a scholarship to students who are like children of employees, right? So the company offered an award, and so did the union. It was a union workplace, and the union also offered awards, right? So think about who you know in your life, where they work, who they're associated with. Odds are a lot of different corporations are going to offer scholarships, unions, and so on. If you work for Loblaws, for instance, they got a lot of grocery stores, they have awards for employees. Personal circumstance, a lot more specific, right? Here we're talking, circumstance, really. Are you a single parent, product of the foster child system, perhaps, suffered trauma of some kind? Lots of different types there. LGBTQ as well, if you identify with that community. There are awards specifically targeted for people in those circumstances. Financial need, pretty straightforward. Chances are you need the coin. And location, not only where you're going to school, but also where you live, where you grew up. We'll see awards from small towns in BC and southwestern Ontario, right? Who are, hey, if you grew up in the Chatham-Kent area, you may be eligible, right? That's all it takes. So think about where you came from too. So it's a lot to consider. We do our best on Scholarships Canada to let the tech do the talking with our little get matched tech here. Basically, you sign up like a social media, just fill out your info. If you've ever signed up for Instagram, you know what you're in for, and you get a list of matching schools, right? So this is from last year. Several awards with deadlines cascading, and the value and sort of what to expect. You can click through to get more details on any of these. We also encourage you to sign up for deadline alerts. This is a monthly email. If you're not on the site all that often, you'll get this email once a month that tells you, hey, so-and-so award, MLD, Canadian third year, IUBH, they're all closing soon, right? And you might qualify, so check it out. We've also got newsletters and so on, but if nothing else, the deadline alerts is pretty handy when you're looking for scholarships. On the site, you can filter and search. Generally, field of study is pretty handy. If you search STEM, you're going to find quite a few awards. But more general tips, more site agnostic. Getting motivated. Finding a scholarship is like finding a part-time job. If you've ever stocked a shelf or sold a shoe, you know that it can be tricky to get in on the ground floor, and you don't necessarily get the first part-time job that you apply for, right? So staying motivated and investing the time is pretty important. If you're in the sort of grade 10, 11 basket, your couple hours a week should be dedicated more to building out your resume rather than actually searching for scholarships, because you don't necessarily qualify yet. But still, that notion of keeping consistent time that you're dedicating to, your resume, your volunteer, searching for awards. This is pretty important. It's not a one and done kind of thing, especially since scholarship deadlines happen all throughout the year. Deadline alerts I mentioned, understand the requirements too. You can reach out to admins if you're really not sure. You can find the contact info and just shoot them an email, give them a call. They'll be happy to hear from you and try to answer any questions that you may have. A couple other general tips. Smaller awards, I touched on this. Less competition, right? Many admins are looking for more people. And if TD with $70,000 is sucking up all the oxygen, retail with $1,000 might not be. So think about those smaller awards. $1,000 is still however many hours of working minimum wage job, right? You'd rather be just getting a check. To be prepared, we'll talk a little bit about this too in just a second. And don't give up. Don't be discouraged. That's the real key. So your documents. This is a bit of a time saver. Many awards, certainly the higher tier ones, are going to ask you for your resume, for a personal statement, maybe for a reference. So,
would you mind?
Documents. Come up with your resume. Have a standard just piece that you can edit. Personal statement, your references as well. Get all this stuff together now while you can, especially if you're in high school, you're in a position where you can make good connections with teachers, coaches, religious figures, to get those references, right? So that when the time comes to apply, you have all this stuff ready to go. And then you can just customize and tweak based on the award. So, you've got a standard personal statement. It's full of flavor. It's got your whole personality in there, 500 words. You love it. Now just tweak it a little bit for a given award and you're good to go, right? Don't feel like you have to write something fresh every time, but don't tell them I told you that. Yeah, otherwise, a couple other housekeeping things. On Scholarship Canada, you're going to find a ton of tips and FAQs, sort of checklists, sample reference letters, that kind of thing. So check that out if you want a little bit of help developing some of these boilerplates. Yeah. On social, you'll find us too. We post about awards all the time, new stuff. It's well curated there too by my colleague, certainly not by me. A quick plug for SchoolFinder, same idea, but this is if you're looking for a school or a program, you can find profiles about them and events and so on. But next steps, this is probably what you really want to know. If you're in grade 11, grade 10, right now you need to work on building your resume. So that's getting those volunteer hours that really matter to you, right? That affect your life, that change you somehow. Demonstrating leadership, right? You don't need to be the student council president. You could start an anime club at your high school. Maybe you could volunteer for your swim team, right? Keeping notes on laps. Yeah, you don't have to be the captain of the ship to still demonstrate leadership, right? Think about how you can take a leadership role in your everyday activities. And then your grades too. You're in a position where you can sharpen your grades, so not a bad idea. But really the leadership, the volunteer, the community engagement bit is key. Once you get to grade 12, now you're looking at applying for awards. Here you really want to focus on your entrance awards, especially if you can find stuff that's renewable. I mentioned that already. Once you get into college, uni, now you're getting involved with clubs and so on, but I think that's beyond our scope right now. So I think that's about it for me. Thank you for listening. Really appreciate it. Happy, of course, to answer questions in the chat a little bit, and then we'll come back, I think, at the end for a voice Q&A.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Logan. Thank you so much. Actually, I have a couple of questions. I took mental notes, but I wanted to, thank you for that. Please add your questions on chat box, and we will have the Q&A session. Logan might be able to answer some of those during the next talk, but now we're going to have Amanda from Yconic, and she is going to give her presentation, which I can't wait to hear as well. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. Everyone can hear me okay. Logan, thank you so much for going first. I think you covered most of my topics. You all will probably see a lot of it similar, and such a great resource with Scholarships Canada that they have to offer there. And so what grade is everyone in right now? If you guys want to drop it in the chat box. And I'm also curious to hear what stresses you or worries you the most about getting started and applying for scholarships. What is your biggest worry right now applying for scholarships? What stresses you right now? If you want to drop it into the chat box. Curious to see. I'm sure that they're all similar.
There seems to be a lot of grade 12s
and
some grade 11s.
Finding the right ones, writing essays, hate writing essays. I hear you. I'm the same way. Not enough time. Wow. Yes, there's a lot going on, and hopefully together we can overcome this and help you get started. So let me share my screen here quickly. Sorry, everyone can see this now. We're good. So my name is Amanda Barbosa. I work for Yconic, and I actually work for another one of our brands called Student Life Network. I work very closely with our ambassador programs, and thank you so very much for inviting me today to speak on scholarships. And, over the next couple of minutes, we're going to review 3 resources and 12 tips in helping you overcome some of these challenges and win scholarships. The fact is, there are millions of dollars of scholarships that go unclaimed every year. There seems to be a false belief amongst students that scholarships aren't for them. And either you might feel like you're not smart enough or good enough in sports, or you might just be simply lacking putting together that 10-page essay and then physically mailing it off somewhere. But let me assure you that those billions of dollars could be yours. Well, not all of it, but there is money out there for you to work towards your studies and education. So yeah, it's really that simple, is applying. And winning scholarships is not about being the smartest or the strongest student out there. And it's just about applying for the right scholarships at the right time. So there are basically two different types of scholarships. There's the automatic consideration and the need to apply. So the automatic consideration, this means that there's no application that's necessary to be considered for the award. These awards are typically given out to students who rank highly in academics. And then there's the need to apply, which we're going to cover a little bit more, but basically pretty straightforward. For these scholarships, you need to apply, and we're going to focus on this right now. Whoops, sorry, a second here. So where are these need to apply scholarships? First, you can look within your program. I also highly recommend looking at, once you're accepted to your school, checking out the student union or student association's website. I actually have a lot of friends that work on different campus student unions, and they actually tell me that they may only have 5 applicants that apply for these scholarships, and they actually can only award, one student that they can only win one scholarship. And they're basically telling me that, they're not getting a lot of applications, and there's just this money that's sitting there. And another place to look at is within the faculty as well. Second is outside organizations. Going beyond your school, looking at your workplace, your parents' workplace, charities that you admire, companies that you shop with. A lot of these places have scholarships they offer themselves. And then scholarship websites. So Scholarships Canada, Student Awards, Scholar Tree, and 99 Scholarships. These websites really have, all the listings up. They can help match you and partner you with scholarships, remind you when the deadlines are approaching. And now some tips on how to win these. The biggest one is, manage your time effectively. And Logan covered this as well, like making this like your part-time job. You need to put the time into it, and, turning this day one turning the one day I'm going to start applying into day one. I have spoken to a lot of our student ambassadors, and that is the biggest tip that they have shared with me, is putting it in their calendar on their phone and having the reminders and blocking out the time as if they were going to their part-time job to dedicate searching for their scholarships and applying for the scholarships. Second is setting some goals. So another big tip that I have is, setting achievable goals, like applying for 2 or 3 smaller scholarships per week, and then focusing on like one major scholarship each month. It'll really help you to get to your overall goal of winning scholarships. If you can lay this out in a way, you're going to be able to, achieve those little goals in chunks and get you to where you're trying to go. The third thing is staying organized. And I know this sounds like such an easy task, but sometimes the no-brainer is one of those tasks that we just forget about. But a biggest tip that came from our students was creating a document or like a spreadsheet type document that you're keeping track of the scholarships that you've already applied to and the ones that you're interested in applying to, and setting those deadlines and just really, holding yourself accountable. A lot of the websites that we reference to that can match you and remind you about the deadlines that are coming up. This staying organized is going to really help you get to that overall goal and keep you accountable for actually applying for those scholarships. The fourth tip that that came from our students, like yourselves in grade 12 and in their first year and who have won scholarships, their advice was, keeping copies of your essays and applications on, like a Google Drive or whatever platform that you use. And that'll help you to save some time in the future when you're applying for similar scholarships, and you can simply edit your previous work and tailor it for the scholarship that you're applying for. Fifth, using Grammarly. I know in the moment that, we're so used to texting our friends, and we forget, all these important tools, but it can really help, save time for you, and you don't want to be disqualified on a few spelling mistakes. And make sure you, sweat the details. Like, don't skim through the terms and conditions. Half, writing a good application, is about understanding what the provider is looking for. You want to make sure that you're meeting the requirements. And, it may help if you read the details and then make bullet pointed lists of the requirements. And this way it kind of keeps you on track when you're creating that essay or that application. 7, compliment the host. A lot of organizations want to know why you applied directly to them specifically. So for example, if you're, let's say, applying for a scholarship that's offered by CIBC, but the essay question was something unrelated to the company, find a way to compliment the company. You don't have to write like 500 words about why the company is better than another, but just simply provide a few comments that compliment that brand. It doesn't hurt. And don't ignore the small scholarships. Every little bit does count, and multiple awards can really start adding up. Even if the scholarship is worth as little as $500, yeah, there might be a lot of students that are overlooking those smaller scholarships, and like your odds could be greater. But even winning $500 can really help cover the cost of school supplies and textbooks. And choosing the right references. Good recommendations go a long way. So choose someone that knows you well, can confirm your activities, and boast about your abilities. 10, really, play up your strengths. Applying to scholarships that closely resemble your strengths and accomplishments. The closer your resume resembles what is required, the better your chances of winning. Even though it seems like it's an obvious tip, it is an important one. If you don't know where to start, there's a variety of websites like Yconic and Student Awards that will help you filter out scholarships based on your qualifications. And, stay confident. This is, a big task to overcome and achieve. You want to, during your interview, there's nothing worse than having your answer clearly organized, but presented in a less than ideal manner due to nervousness. So, take a deep breath, think about the question and how you want to answer, and just be confident. And lastly, try to stay relaxed. I know that sounds a little, easier said than done, but, release the tension in your body. I always try to smile when I'm nervous, and breathe, relax, take the moment in. And even like what Logan mentioned, that just like a part-time job, and as you're applying for part-time jobs, you're not always going to get every job that you apply for. And same thing with, scholarships, that it's a big task at hand, and you're not going to get every single one, but try to stay relaxed and be confident, and don't get discouraged through the process. And, let us help you today. You can join Yconic. We'll find you the right scholarships and bursaries and student awards and send them directly to your inbox. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Wow, that was fast, but it was so informative, which is amazing. Wow, there's a lot. I have, before we go on, I'm going to ask everyone to please start asking your questions in the chat box. But I do have a question that came up, in my head earlier, and I wanted to ask both of you, so I can actually get everybody excited about asking questions. So you talked about, getting involved in your community and how important that is, and, to kind of share how much you learn and how much you give, and, like how we change you as a person, how you change the community around you. And I'm going to be biased when I want to ask about this, but, we have programs like VOLUTION that we have a lot of young women that enter this program. How beneficial are these programs that could be used for scholarships? And both of you can ask her. Whoever wants to go first.
Thanks. I'll start off.
Sure.
Yeah, the short answer, it's exactly what students should be doing, is getting involved with an organization like yours, right? It shows not only the sort of commitment to the community, but also to the field, right? You're committed to the sort of STEM experience. And engaging with your peers, really, that's what it comes down to. Are you connected with your environment, right? So getting involved with like-minded people, peers who are on your level with your same interests is exactly what you should be doing. And if you can volunteer your time, if you can help out Doina behind the scenes, all the better. Amanda, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, exactly. The more you get involved in organizations like this, opportunities will probably come up where they may need help in fundraising or organizing events or doing presentations, and those are all like community-based activities and clubs and positions that you sort of like fill on those clubs, and planning activities for students can also really help. So I think that this is a really great start here.
Also, in terms of being involved in programs like VOLUTION, not just volunteer, but actually participate in programs, so you can learn, you can work with your team, you learn something new, you work with other people, you get to meet people in the industry. How beneficial is that for a scholarship?
Yeah, so
and contributing to those conversations, right? Those brainstorming conversations and being a part of it, you can really elevate that experience in the applications and highlight that experience and what you're doing for VOLUTION. Like, I'm sure all these students probably know other students that may not be a part of this, and they could like welcome them into this organization, and then could start highlighting that on some of their applications on how they help grow this organization.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, exactly. This speaks to, again, the leadership skills, right? Even if you're not the class president, you're still demonstrating some of those capabilities, as well as the subject matter expertise, right? Doina, you mentioned sort of chatting with experts in the field, getting to know the stuff that you'd be working with. I've adjudicated many a scholarship in my day as well, and you can tell the students who are tuned in and the students who are not. And if they can speak to subject matter expertise that is above my head, that's worth some extra points for sure.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that, because I keep on mentioning that to students and I'm like, am I right about this? But yeah, and I have another question before we go to the audience. When it comes to the letter of reference, how important is it, and what are some things that are important to include? But also, I work with a lot of young women at VOLUTION, and when they finish with the program, they get into post-secondary and they apply for, for scholarships, and I'm becoming a reference for them for the most part, right? Sure. And so I sometimes ask them, like, can you help me understand? I see them in the program and I see they're involved, but I want to see their strength. So, when they write a letter of reference, I want to hear some of your feedback. I know you touched on it earlier, but I want some feedback. It's like, how much should you talk about your strengths and your important things on that letter of reference? So yeah, if you can touch on that, that would be great. Whoever wants to start.
I always find that it's easier if they have like accomplished a project or something that's going again based on community, that goes back to the community or other members within the organization or the other students, and highlighting those achievements And again, touching on collaboratively working together, achieving a goal, the leadership skills, focusing on that. And if there was any like changes that they helped, contribute to a certain job or project or conversation or event, whether it's virtual or in person, highlighting that in like a reference letter. I write a lot of reference letters too, and it's always easier for the ones who have participated in a lot of things and have helped out. And I've had, influencers that have written like blog articles or done TikTok videos for different brands and who've contributed in brainstorming sessions and writing, blog articles, helping with recruitment, helping spreading, like letting other students know about the organization or scholarships or whatever it may be. And it's easier to highlight those parts than just somebody who just shows up. It's participating and engaging in those different activities that will really help. If you just show up for meetings and your screen is always off and you're not really making an impression on, yourself, or even those connections to those different companies that you were saying that you probably bring in to guest speak. If everyone's just kind of like sitting in a room and they're just not really participating, it's going to be hard to get a reference letter from those people.
Yeah, definitely have to stand out. Yes, Logan?
Yeah, solid. I mean, I totally agree with everything that you just said, Amanda. To add, I guess, a couple other things that strike me is having read many a reference letter, you can tell when the person who wrote it really means what they say. There's code, right? Where person is such and such is a fine applicant, right? Okay, we read that to mean I don't know them. I'm writing this because they asked me to. Versus the reference letter that truly comes through, this person knows the student, right? They've seen that growth, they've sort of charted the change and can speak to it, right? They came in really doubting their capacity to handle fractions, but I saw them, stick it out. I saw them asking for help. Their partners were reaching out, right? Maybe they don't have the highest mark, but I still saw that journey and connected with them. So it is, as you say, Amanda, the people who are engaged that really stand out in the reference letters, and those who read them can tell. As for who to ask and how, it's people who you trust that know you well, a year or two, right, ideally, in a sort of professional-ish capacity, right? So employers, teachers, coaches, not family and friends. And then Doina, when you're writing them, right, if this student connects with you or not, right, if you've seen that sort of journey. So truly be honest in them, because the people who are reading those reference letters, they know anyway.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So we have some questions in chat and I'm going to read them out loud. So I'm going to ask the audience, please either ask your questions on chat, or if you want to raise your hand, there's a button here called reaction. You can raise your hand and you can ask your question yourself. So let me ask a question in here. It says, should you try to only mention recent accomplishments? And I'm thinking that refers to the reference letter or the application. If you wanted to mention past accomplishments, how far back would you be an accepted time frame? 1 or 2 years?
Depends probably on the accomplishment. You probably want to focus primarily on recent, right? But if you're in grade 12, everything is recent, right? You haven't lived all that long. You've been in high school only a couple of years. You haven't had that many opportunities to really accomplish, world-changing, life-changing things. So if it was 3 years ago that you went overseas and volunteered for 6 months or 2 months or 1 week, that's fine. If it changed you, if it had an effect on you, if it set you on your current path, whatever, it was past the statute of limitations, doesn't matter. If it comes through what the experience meant to you, focus on that. How does my personality come through? How do my goals come through? Don't worry so much about arbitrary limits. That's my thinking. Amanda, what do you think?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it depends on what type of scholarship that you're applying for. That if it's part of the story to reference something that you did in grade 9, then yeah, include it. So I think it would be, exactly what Logan said. And you know, if it's part of that experience and story, then include some of the earlier, but like, obviously, like, hey, in grade 5, I did this. It's probably not going to be relevant.
If I can just jump in and correct me if I might be wrong, but even if you do something in grade 5, and that could have been the starting point, and you can say, when I was in grade 5 is when I was in this, let's just say, part of the science fair, and because of that, that's where my love for science started, and that's what I achieved since grade 5 to where I am today. I think that actually is, I would say, would be acceptable, right? Like,
yeah,
I see it as a story.
Totally agree. And actually, that's a great point in terms of the sort of personal statement in general, is telling the story, right? Having the personal narrative is important. Human beings, we love stories. So the more you can connect your sort of past to your present, to your future, generally, the more resonant your work will be.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, please continue to ask your questions in the chat. There's one question here, it says, and I think this was covered, but maybe you can expand more on this. It says, are community service hours used to earn scholarships? If so, how many do you recommend?
Yeah, sure. So this is a common question, and it's almost another myth, right? I should add it to the list. A lot of high school systems in Canada rely on a certain amount of volunteer hours to graduate, right? So I think 40 hours here you've got to do. But that's not how you should be conceptualizing scholarship applications. You should be thinking much more about the personal narrative element, your community experience. Sure, you did 100 hours, but did you have your iPod in and your eyes closed kind of thing, right? That's not what we want to hear. We want to see that you did a handful of hours because that's all you could spare, and you really made a difference in a sort of old man's life type of thing, right? In a nursing home. So short answer, yes, but not, community service hours are used to earn scholarships, yes, but we're not concerned about the hours. We're concerned about the experience, the value, how it has affected you, your goals, and your community. Amanda, do you agree? What do you think?
What you actually did with those hours, you know, and it's very easy for students to say, like, I spent 50 hours planning my prom, and then that was it. That's all that they did the whole entire year. It's a super great accomplishment, but you need to elaborate on the story, the journey, what did that mean? And what else were you doing in the community or for other, you know, families or students or whatever have you. So I think it's more important on what you did with the hours rather than the overall number.
To build on this, I have a question. So when it comes to volunteers hours, some people, you know, they just say, I want to have my volunteer hours, whatever that is. You know, I just want to have my volunteer hours, because I see that a lot. I work with high school students. So the question would be, like, should they really think about where they volunteered at time? Is that important? Or, I mean, like, I volunteer and I've been, like, you know, doing something that has nothing to do with where I'm applying for post-secondary school, or should I really think about that?
I can answer a little bit on that. So depending on the school board and the school, they have guidelines on what the volunteer hours that are required, what they need to be, guidelines of what they can do that qualify them to complete their volunteer hours. So sometimes it's school specific, sometimes it's school board specific. So that would be like the starting point for them to research to make sure that they understand what types of volunteer hours qualify them in order to graduate. In terms of scholarships, then that's a little bit different. It's a little bit more open-ended. Logan, did you have more to add to that? My mind always goes to the graduating volunteer hours and the number of sheets that I've signed off myself. And I've learned, you know, there are some schools that they're very easy with just signing off on them. And then there's others that will come back and say, no, you know what, that actually didn't meet the criteria.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. I haven't personally signed as many, but I certainly remember my high school days, as ancient as they are. And my experience, if students just want to check the box of I got my 40 hours, I'm done. Fine, more power to them, that's fine. The folks who are really engaged, that's going to come through in the personal statement. I don't really subscribe to the idea that your volunteer should be necessarily related to your field of study. You know, you might have an interest in animals in your free time and volunteer at the SPCA and then become a mathematician, right? There's no one-to-one there, but you're still engaged, right? On the flip side, I have also seen awards that ask, okay, tell us about your experience in STEM, right? Demonstrate to us that you're committed to STEM. Okay, well, the students who have volunteered with Revolution, et cetera, are going to have a little bit more of a step up. So it's going to vary. It's going to depend. Really go with your heart. If you care, you're going to care. And if the SPCA calls out to you, volunteer for them, right? Follow your heart. If you want to just tick the box, then go with whomever, right? Tick the box.
Is there any way that when you want to apply for post-secondary and then you apply for a scholarship to help you pay for that, is there any way to find out ahead of time, like what are the things that they look for in terms of community engagement, or, you know, anything to do to help you with your application, or, you know? Yeah.
That's a great question. You'll often find on schools, more on like scholarship admins who are not schools, but some schools will have this as well. And it's a page of previous recipients, right? So, okay, who won this award in 2020, right? They may have a headshot, they may have a little blurb, name, program, what they're about, right? Oh, they volunteered with Revolution for 2 years before they went into engineering. It won't tell you a lot, right? You won't read their winning essay in most cases, but you'll get a sense of what they did. And sometimes your jaw will be on the floor at the accomplishments of people who are 14, 15, started a charity, right? Whatever they've done. So you might be inspired and you might be a little chastened too. So yeah, if you can find out previous recipients, I'd say that's a pretty good way to start. Amanda, what do you think? I'm quite curious.
I was going to suggest if they're searching at a younger grade level, like grade 11, can you like check out the scholarships that are being offered right now and like the requirements? I don't know if that's, you know, another way to kind of like look at it, to kind of set yourself up for next year, to know like maybe, you know, what you should be working on, or even if you're in grade, even earlier, grade 10, and you're starting to look at these sites or the schools that you're interested in, and like Logan's saying, like looking at the past recipients and maybe that, you know, that's your focus the next, you know, 2 years to work towards those areas that maybe you're not doing.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. That's kind of like when you apply for a job, it would be the same idea. You do as much research as possible about the company and about the position and what, you know, what's involved and how do you prepare for that. So I would say it would be probably about the same. There's a question on chat, says, would you recommend keeping your hours as letters or in the sheet given by schools? So when you submit your hours or volunteer hours, I believe, do you send a sheet from the school signed by the supervisor, or do you write a letter?
You're going to write a letter. You're going to integrate it most of the time into your personal statement. A lot of the time you'll be asked for an essay of 500 words, right? You've pre-written it. All that part is done. You've already integrated, because I worked with Revolution, I did X, Y, and Z, right? You're not going to submit your hours sheet to prove it, right? People trust you. You're going to speak to the quality of the experience, not to the hours. Amanda, do you agree?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm going to go with a follow on this. So when you put your add just personal statement and you add information about the volunteer hours and the experience, is it recommended to actually ask the, you know, someone from that organization to give you a letter of reference? Or if you write, you know, about your personal statement about the community work that you did, or anything about the community work that you did, or anything about your personal statement, but the reference does not relate to that, how is that impacting your application?
It's interesting.
Yeah.
If you're going to ask, let's take yourself as an example, right?
Right.
Volunteered with Revolution for 2 years. I did X, Y, and Z, and I'm super proud of my accomplishments. And then, Joanna, you write a reference letter that says, oh, you know what, person did A, B, and C, and they were fine. If there's a disconnect there, that's not ideal. because we're looking to a reference letter to endorse a person, right? So if it doesn't match what you say, then that's a failure right there. But I would not say that you should necessarily approach you as a reference just because you volunteered there, if that makes sense, right? You could go with a teacher and a coach, and sure, you volunteer also, but that's not one of your referees. That's okay in most cases. Amanda, do you have a different interpretation? What do you think?
No, I think that's, yeah, you hit that. And it also helps when you're asking for a reference letter to let that person know what exactly you're applying for, like what the scholarship is, and if there's certain points that they need to cover, because it could very much vary. And I've had students come back to me that they're applying for different types of scholarships, and I have to adjust the letter to highlight the scholarship they're applying for, because you can't just always do like a broad reference letter that's going to cover everything, especially if they're asking for something specific. And like Logan said, that it's yeah, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I like hear dogs barking in the background. I'm like, okay.
Not about how important it is to have a personal statement, and you talk about the experience in your life that was either a volunteer or at school or anywhere at work that you have done work in the past. But then, like, how important it is to have a reference from someone that actually testified to that experience. Is that important or not? I keep on going to this because I keep on getting so many of my students asking me for references. So I just kind of say, well, I want to, like, if I'm going to write a reference letter, it has to be, of course, to what has to do with Revolution. But if they're personal, I don't see their personal statements, so I don't know what they wrote. But if, generally speaking, if students are applying and they write something on their personal statement, it has nothing to do with Revolution. Let's just say they have been a student with us, it's true, but then how important it is for me to send it, to give them a reference versus someone else that actually can testify to that person, to the statement.
Sure. Okay, so this might be a hot take, and maybe, yeah. So my sense, having read a lot of scholarships, is that your application does not need to be a perfectly bounded object, right? Not every piece needs to reflect every other. So as long as you as a reference are not contradicting, right? Saying, hey, this isn't true, that is fine. I think you can speak to everything that you know of the student, right, in their capacity with Revolution, and you don't know what they do at the grocery store when they work. That's fine. Right. You're not expected to. So you just want to speak openly and honestly about the applicant's work with you, right? What you've personally experienced. And yeah, it doesn't need to hit every beat of the personal statement, I don't think, so long as it's in concert with.
Right.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. This is a bit thornier though, so I'm sort of thinking through it as I speak. Amanda, what do you think?
Yeah, and I wonder too, are students asking for reference letters for jobs too? Because that could be a little bit different. The scholarship side and then like the job side.
Now, for us as scholarships, we have a lot of the girls when they're done with our programs, grade 12, they're looking for scholarships and they ask for references. And I've just kind of wanted to be able to guide them in a way, or just say maybe it might be a good idea to ask for reference from someone that to kind of match your personal statement, so to speak. But if that's not important, I can see how if I am to write a reference, or anyone that they have been involved in other volunteer positions, they could testify to them the character, right? So I'm sure that what it says on the personal statement kind of bounce like what you say on a reference letter, it kind of testifies to the character. So yeah. So sorry.
Yeah, I'm disagreeing. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you. It's like maybe I should just work at Scholarships Canada or Yconic. I would love to read some scholarship applications. I think it would be so interesting to see what they're saying. It's like it would be amazing. I know I can see a lot of applicants when they apply for programs at Revolution. Our seminar program is quite extensive, and all the stories, and sometimes I stop and I cry like, oh my God, this is amazing. And like you can see the passion that they have to, for what we do, which is so amazing. So, well, we are getting closer to the end, so I'm not seeing any more questions, but I just wanted to mention that we will send the recording to everyone else that hasn't been here. We had quite a few people that has registered, but I'm not sure why they haven't showed up, but we will send the recording. And also watch for your email, because Amanda from Yconic is giving you a $200 scholarship for one winning person. So please enter, check your email and just enter that the application and add the form, and that's amazing. And other than that, I want to say thank you to Logan and thank you to Amanda. Thank you so much for giving your time. I really appreciate it. I know it's been a really hot topic for us at Revolution, with so many students applying for scholarships. And with that, I just wanted to say thank you. I don't know what else to say.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really great. I appreciate you having us out. Enjoyed hearing everything that you had to say, Amanda. Really, it was great. So thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, everyone. I hope you all are feeling good and confident over the next little bit to get started and applying and searching for those scholarships. And it was great meeting everyone, and great meeting you, Logan, too.
Thank you.